Alright, this is chapter 6 of As Good as Dead. 6. Pip didn't see them until she was standing right on top of them. She might never have seen them if she hadn't stopped to retie the laces on her sneakers. She lifted her foot and stared down. What the? There were faint lines drawn in white chalk right at the foot of the Amobi's driveway, where it met the sidewalk just beyond. They were so faded that maybe they weren't chalk at all. Maybe they were salt marks left behind from the rain. Pip rubbed her eyes. They were scratchy and dried out from staring at her ceiling all night. Even though yesterday evening with Ravi's family had gone well and her face actually ached from smiling, she hadn't earned back her sleep. There had only been one place to find it, in that forbidden second drawer down. She removed her balled-up fist from her eyes and blinked. Her gaze just as gritty as before. Unable to trust her eyes, she bent to swipe a finger through the nearest line, held it up against the sun to study it. It definitely seemed like chalk, felt like it too, between the bulbs of her fingers. And the lines themselves, they didn't seem like they could be natural. They were too straight, too intentional. Pip tilted her head to look at them from another angle. There seemed to be 5 distinct figures, a repeating pattern of crossing and intersecting lines. Could they be birds, maybe? Like how children drew birds from a distance, squashed M's mounting cotton candy skies? No, that wasn't right. Too many lines. Was it some kind of cross? Yeah, it looked like a cross, maybe, where the longer stem split into 2 legs near the bottom. Oh, wait. She stepped over them to look from the other side. They could be little stick people. Those were their legs, the trunks of their bodies crossed through with their overstraightened arms. The small line above was their neck, but then nothing. They were headless. So, she straightened up, either a cross with 2 legs or a stick figure with no head. Neither particularly comforting. Pip didn't think Josh had chalk in the house, and he wasn't the kind of kid who enjoyed drawing anyway. Must be one of the neighborhood kids, then, one with a somewhat morbid imagination, although who was she to comment on that? Pip checked as she walked up Thatcher Road. There were no chalk lines on anyone else's driveway, nor on the sidewalk or road. Nothing out of the ordinary, in fact, for a Sunday morning in Fairview, other than an innocuous square of duct tape that had been stuck onto the black and white road signs, so it now instead read Thatcher Pode. Pip shrugged the figures off as she turned onto Main Street, chalked it up to see the Yardley children from 6 doors down. And anyway, she could see Ravi up ahead, approaching the cafe from the other end. He looked tired, normal tired, his hair ruffled and the sun flashing off his new glasses. He'd found out over the summer that he was ever so slightly nearsighted, and you can bet he made as much fuss as he could at the time, though now he sometimes forgot to even put them on. He hadn't spotted her yet in his own world. "Oi," she called from 10 feet away, making him jump. He stuck out his bottom lip in exaggerated sadness. "Be gentle," he said. "I'm delicate this morning." Of course, Ravi's hangovers were the worst hangovers the world had ever seen, near fatal every time. They made it to each other outside the cafe door, Pip's hand finding its home in the crook of Ravi's elbow. "And what's this oi we've started?" He pressed the question into her forehead. "I have an array of beautiful and flattering nicknames for you, and the best you can come up with is oi." "Ah, well," Pip said, "someone very old and wise once told me that I am entirely without pizzazz, so I think he meant very wise and very handsome, actually." "Did I?" "So," he paused to scratch his nose with his sleeve, "I think last night went really well." "Really?" Pip said tentatively. She thought it had too, but she didn't entirely trust herself anymore. He broke into a small laugh, seeing her worried face. "You did good. Everyone loved you. Genuinely. Rahul even mentioned this morning to say how much he liked you. And," Ravi lowered his voice conspiratorially, "I think even Aunt Zara might have warmed up to you." "No." "Yes," he said, grinning. She scowled about 20% less than her normal rate, so I call that a raging success." "Well, I'll be damned," Pip said, leaning into the cafe door to push it open, the bell jangling overhead. "Hi, Jackie," she called as usual to the woman who owned the cafe, who was currently restocking the sandwich shelves. "Oh, hello, dear," Jackie said with a quick glance back, almost losing a brie and bacon roll to the floor. "Hi, Ravi." "Morning," he said, a thickness to his voice until it cleared his throat. Jackie freed herself from the packaged sandwiches and turned to face them. "I think she's out back, in a fight with the temperamental sandwich toaster. Hold on." She backed up behind the counter and called, Cara! Pip spotted the top knot first, bobbing atop Cara's head as she walked out from the employer's entrance to the kitchen, wiping her hands on her green apron. Nah, it's still on the fritz, she said to Jackie, eyes focused on a crusted stain on her apron. Best we can offer are marginally warm paninis for the time. She finally glanced up, eyes springing to Pip's, a smile following close behind. Miss Sweet F.A., long time no see. You saw me yesterday, Pip replied, catching on too late to Cara's wiggling eyebrows. Well, she should have waggled first, then spoken. They established these rules long ago. Jackie smiled as though she could read the hastened conversation happening between their eyes. Well, girls, if it's been a whole day, you probably have a long overdue catch-up. No? She turned to Cara. You can start your break early. Oh, Jackie, Cara said with an over-flourished bow. You are too good to me. I know, Jackie waved her off. I'm a saint. Pip, Ravi, what can I get you? Pip ordered a strong coffee. She had already had two before leaving the house, and her fingers were fast and fidgety. But how else could she make it through the day? Ravi pursed his lips, eyeballing the ceiling like this was the hardest decision he'd ever faced. You know, he said, I could be tempted to buy one of those marginally warm paninis. Pip rolled her eyes. Ravi must have forgotten he was dying of a hangover. He had absolutely zero willpower in the presence of sandwiches. Pip settled at the far table, Cara taking the seat beside her, shoulders brushing together. Cara had never understood the concept of personal space, and yet sitting here now, Pip was grateful for it. Cara wasn't even supposed to be here anymore, in Fairview. Her grandparents had planned to put the Wards' house up for sale at the end of the school year. But minds changed and plans changed. Naomi found a job nearby in Stratford, and Cara had decided to take a gap year to go traveling, working at the cafe to save up money. Suddenly taking the Ward sisters out of Fairview was more complicated than leaving them here, so the grandparents were back in New Jersey, and Cara and Naomi were still here, at least until next year. Now Cara would be the one left behind when Pip left for Columbia in a few weeks. Pip couldn't believe it would really happen, that Fairview would ever let her get away. She nudged Cara back. So, how's Steph? She asked. Steph, the new girlfriend. Although it had almost been 2 months now, so maybe Pip shouldn't think of her as new anymore. The world moved on, even if she couldn't. And Pip liked her. She was good for Cara, made her happy. Yeah, she's good. Training for a triathlon or something because she's actually insane. Oh wait, you'd take her side now, wouldn't you? Miss runs a lot. Yep, Pip nodded. Definitely Team Steph. She's a great asset in a zombie apocalypse. So would I, Cara said. Pip pulled a face at her. You would die within the first half hour of any apocalypse scenario, let's be honest. Ravi came over them, placing a tray down, carrying their coffees and his sandwich. He'd already taken a massive bite before bringing it over, of course. Oh, so, Cara lowered her voice. Big drama here this morning. What? Ravi asked between bites. We suddenly had a bit of a rush, so there was a line, and I was at the register taking orders, and then, her voice was a whisper now, Max Hastings came in. Pip's shoulders arched and her jaw tensed. Why was he everywhere? Why could she never get away from him? I know, Cara said, reading Pip's face. And obviously I wasn't going to serve him, so I told Jackie I'd clean the milk frother while she dealt with the customers. She took Max's order, and then someone else came in. She paused for dramatic effect. Jason Bell. Oh, really? Ravi said. Yeah, he was standing in line behind Max, and even though I was trying to hide from them, I could see him kind of eyeballing the backs of Max's head. Understandably, Pip said. Jason Bell had just as much reason to hate Max Hastings as she did. Whatever the outcome of the trial, Max had drugged and raped his youngest daughter, Becca. And as horrific and unspeakable as that was, it was even worse than that. Max's actions were the catalyst for Andy Bell's death. You might even say a direct cause. Everything came back to Max Hastings when you really thought about it. Becca traumatized, letting Andy die in front of her and covering it up. Sal Singh dead, believed to be Andy's killer. That poor woman in Elliot Ward's attic. Pip's project. Her dog Barney buried in the backyard. Howie Bowers in prison sharing whispers about Child Brunswick. Charlie Green arriving in town. Layla Mead. Jamie Reynolds missing. Stanley Forbes dead and blood on Pip's hands. She could trace it all back to Max Hastings. The origin. Her cornerstone. And maybe Jason Bell's too. I mean, yeah, Cara said, but I wasn't expecting the next part. So Jackie handed Max his drink, and as he was turning to walk away, Jason held out his elbow and nudged right into Max. Spilled coffee down his t-shirt. No. Ravi stared at Cara. I know, her whisper strained into an excitable hiss. And then Max was like, watch what you're doing. Watch where you're going, and shoved him back. And Jason grabbed Max's collar and said, you stay out of my way, or something like that. But anyway, by this point, Jackie had inserted herself between them, and then this other customer escorted Max out of the cafe, and apparently he was going on about, you'll hear from my lawyer, or something. Sounds like Max, Pip said, pushing the words through her gritted teeth. She shivered. The air felt different now that she knew he'd been here too. Stuffy, cold, tainted. Fairview was just not big enough for both of them. Naomi's been wondering what to do about Max, Cara continued, so quiet you couldn't even call it a whisper anymore. Whether she should go to the police, tell them about New Year 2014, the hit and run. Even though she'll get in trouble, she's saying at least it will get Max in trouble too, as he was the one driving. Maybe it's a way of putting him behind bars, at least for a short while, so he can't hurt anyone else. And put an end to this ridiculous lawsuit thing. No, Pip cut across her. Naomi can't go to the police. It won't work. She'll only be hurting herself and nothing will happen to him. Max will win again. But at least the truth will be out, and Naomi, the truth doesn't matter, Pip said, digging her nails into her thigh. The Pip from last year wouldn't recognize this one today. That lively-eyed girl and her school project, naively clinging to the truth, wrapped it around herself like a blanket. But the Pip sitting here was a different person, and she knew better. The truth had burned her too many times. It couldn't be trusted. Tell her not to, Cara. She didn't hit that man, and she didn't want to leave him. She was coerced. Tell her I promise I will get him. I don't know how, but I will do it. Max will get exactly what he deserves. Ravi stretched an arm around Pip's shoulder, giving it a gentle squeeze. Or, instead of revenge plots, we could focus our energy on going off to college in a few weeks, he said brightly. You haven't even picked out a new comforter. I'm told that's a very important milestone. Pip knew that Ravi and Cara had just flashed each other a look. I'm fine, she said. Cara looked like she was about to say something more, but her eyes drew up as the bell jangled above the cafe door. Pip turned to follow her gaze. If it was Max Hastings, she didn't know what she might do. Hello, gang, said a voice Pip knew too well. Connor Reynolds. She smiled and waved at him, but it wasn't just Connor. Jamie was here too, closing the cafe door with another chime of the bell. He spotted Pip a moment later, and a grin split his face, wrinkling his freckled nose, frecklier now after the summer. And she would know. She spent that entire week he was missing studying photos of his face, searching his eyes for answers. Fancy seeing you guys here, Jamie said, overtaking Connor as he strolled over to their table. He placed a fleeting hand on Pip's shoulder. Hey, how are you doing? Can I get you guys a drink or something? Sometimes Pip saw that same look in Jamie's eyes, too, haunted by Stanley's death and the parts they'd both played in it, a burden they would always share. But Jamie hadn't been there when it happened. He didn't have blood on his hands, not in the same way. Why is whenever I'm on a ship, the whole freaking circus turns up, Cara said. Do you guys think I'm lonely or something? No, mate, Connor flicked her top knot. We think you need the practice. Connor Reynolds, I swear to God, if you order one of those iced pumpkin macchiatos today, I will murder you dead. Cara, Jackie called cheerfully, but from behind the counter. Remember lesson number 1, we don't threaten to kill customers. Even if they're ordering the most complicated thing just to annoy you, Cara stood up with an exaggerated side eye at Connor. Even then. Cara growled, calling Connor a basic white bitch under her breath as she made her way to the counter. One iced pumpkin macchiato coming up, she said with the fakest of enthusiasm. Made with love, I hope, Connor laughed. Cara glowered. More like spite. Well, as long as it's not spit. So, Jamie said, taking Cara's empty seat. Nat told me about the mediation meeting. Pip nodded. It was eventful. I can't believe he's suing you. Jamie's hand tightened into a fist. It's not fair. You've been through enough. She shrugged. It'll be fine. I'll work it out. Everything always came back to Max Hastings. He was on every side and every angle, pressing in on her, crushing her, filling her head with the sound of Stanley's cracking ribs. She wiped the blood off her hands and changed the subject. How's paramedic training going? Yeah, it's going well, he nodded, broke into a smile. I'm actually really enjoying it. Who would have thought I would ever enjoy hard work? I think Pip's disgusting work ethic might be contagious, Ravi said. You should stay back, for your own safety. The bell clanked again, and from the sudden way Jamie's eyes glowed, Pip knew exactly who had just walked in. Nat De Silva stood in the doorway, her silver hair tied up in a small stubby ponytail, though most of the hair had made a break from the scrunchie fanning around her long neck. Nat's face lit up as she surveyed the room, rolling up the sleeves of her plaid shirt. Pip! Nat made a beeline straight for her. She bent down and wrapped a long arm around Pip's shoulders, hugging her from behind. She smelled like summer. "Didn't know you'd be here. How are you?" "Good," Pip said, their cheeks pressed together, Nat's skin cold and fresh from the breeze outside. "You?" "Yeah, we're doing good, aren't we?" Nat straightened up and walked over to Jamie. He stood up to offer her his chair, pulling out another for himself. They paused as they collided, Nat's hand pressed to his chest. "Hey, you," she said, and kissed him quickly. "Hey, you yourself," Jamie said, the color rising to his already red cheeks. Pip couldn't help but smile watching the two of them together. What was the word? Nice, she supposed. Something pure, something good that no one else could take away from her. To have known each of them at their lowest, and to see how far they'd come. On their own and together. A part of their lives, and they a part of hers. Sometimes good things did happen in this town, Pip reminded herself, her gaze catching on Ravi, finding his hand under the table. Jamie's glowing eyes and Nat's fierce smile. Connor and Cara bickering over pumpkin spice. This was what she wanted, wasn't it? Just this. Normal life. People you could count on your fingers who cared about you as much as you cared about them. The people who would look for you if you disappeared. Could she bottle this feeling, live off it for a while, fill herself up with something good and ignore the slick of blood on her hands, not think about the gun in the sound of that cup hitting the table or those dead eyes waiting for her in the darkness of a blink? Oh, too late.